Hello and welcome to the Caregivers Forum, a weekly event for caregivers to ask questions and get advice. I'm Marjorie, founder of Otis Health, a company created to help families and caregivers manage their health care. Our topic today is safety and security around the house for both senior adults and children with special needs. During our event, please share your questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Joining me today are three fantastic guests: Marjorie Diaz, the Health Education Associate in Injury Prevention in the Trauma Department at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Also, Paolo Piscatelli, founder and CEO of Rescu Saves Lives, a new emergency dispatch service that is activated with just 2 taps on a smartphone. We also have Jeannie Callahan, a mother of 2 with autism and currently a special accounts manager at AngelSense, a GPS tracking solution for children and adults. So I'm going to start us off today with a little talk about one of the most common injuries for senior adults. That's adults over the age of 65. So these statistics are a bit shocking. For adults falling in their homes, about 3 million of them every year go to the emergency room. There's over 800,000 of those senior adults are hospitalized, and tragically 34,000 deaths a year. And the majority of those injuries that result in hospitalizations are due to hip fractures and head injuries. So I'm going to talk about 3 areas for us to think about when we want to prevent these types of home injuries. One is the bathroom. So if you have a chance to remodel a bathroom for a senior adult, try to install a shower instead of a tub. It makes it much easier for them to get in and out, and avoids the whole stepping in the tub and out of the tub issue. And provide anti-slip mats at the bottom of the shower or the tub, and those are just a few dollars in most hardware stores. Also get a shower chair and handheld shower head. Those you can install yourself. You can buy real stylish ones like the teak one on the right, or just a basic medical one. You can also install or purchase grab bars. Make sure the grab bar you purchase is an ADA compliant one. That means it can support at least 500 pounds. And if the bathroom's small and there aren't a lot of hooks for towels, try to look for a grab bar that has its own little towel rack. That will avoid your loved one putting a towel over the grab bar and having an issue with that person slipping off the grab bar as they try to grab it in an emergency. And you should also look at bath mats if they want a bath mat in their bathroom that has an anti-slip surface on the bottom. And then watch them in the bathroom. Actually observe them getting out of the tub and fully dressed. Don't do this while they're showering or using the toilet, but actually watch them get in and out of the tub. Watch them sit down and stand up from the toilet. Make sure that they're actually comfortable reaching for the implements that you've installed to help them out. And that should help reduce the likelihood of a bathroom injury. And then for cabinets, we really want them to stop using step stools as much as possible. As folks get older, we have orientation issues, and it's better to try to put everything at eye level. So go through the kitchen, closets, the garage, any place where cabinets and shelves are, and try to get everything down to eye level, clear the top shelves, stuff it with things to avoid them from putting additional items up there. But really you want to keep things at eye level, something where they could just reach right in front of them and grab things, and that will avoid a lot of those types of falling injuries. And then finally, stairs. And if the stairs that you have in the house are carpeted, make sure that the carpet isn't bunched up, that it's actually tight into the stair, so there isn't a chance of somebody slipping over the edge of the carpet and falling. If the surface is bare or the step is bare, make sure it's not slick. And then if it is slick, you can look at installing these little mats that you can get at Home Depot for each of the stairs. It helps create a non-slip surface. And then finally, install rails on both sides of the staircase. And then similar to the bathroom and the cabinets, just watch the person in action. Actually see them go up and down the stairs. That way you'll get an idea, are they properly balancing themselves? Are they stepping up properly? Are they using the handrails? So those are my ideas and some good advice, hopefully, on preventing injuries for folks that are a little older. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to switch to our first guest, and that is Marjorie Diaz. Marjorie, do you mind talking with us a little bit about preventing injuries for children?
All right, hi everyone. Let me make this full screen for you. Thank you so much, Mark, for the introduction. So as he mentioned, I'm part of the injury prevention program at Children's Hospital. We cover a variety of topics depending on the trauma numbers that we see in our bay. One of the most common things that we see are falls, but I'll hit a little bit about the main topics that we typically cover with families that have children with special healthcare needs. In terms of autism and just in general, household safety, we typically tell parents, obviously, to stay very organized, label safe and unsafe locations and items around the home. That really does help children sort of see, what they can and cannot do. And then also rewarding that good behavior, that good preventative behavior. So if they know not to go to a certain area and they've made that very clear to you, definitely, reward that behavior. And then it's also important for you to teach those safety skills everywhere. So obviously adhere those safety tips to your home, but be sure to review other topics that maybe are not present in your home, but they might be present in other locations where they go, whether that's the neighbor's house, a family member's house, their babysitter's house. So it's really important that you sort of set those aside apart just from your general home safety. As I mentioned, preventing falls is the most typical thing that we see. So things that we recommend for parents in general is to not place any furniture near windows. That includes chairs, sofas, beds, tables, or anything that's even movable for the child to move and be able to climb onto a window. Remember to always use window locks and never leave a window open more than 1 inch. Remember also that window screens actually keep bugs out of your home, not children in. That's another misconception of that. Use furniture straps to secure any tall furniture. And I recommend that for all parents and anybody actually who has furniture in their home, because we live in California and earthquakes tend to happen here. Use baby gates, corner guards, treads. So all of those safety products that should be made available to you. Window stops are a really great thing. These furniture straps, kids tend to climb a lot of things, so they'll prevent those tall furnitures from coming all the way down. But then as you can see in those photos, what I typically also recommend from parents is to remove those like exciting things that kids want from those high areas to prevent them from climbing in the first place. Those furniture straps are like your last resort, but you want to make sure that, TV remotes, toys, anything colorful, anything that they typically want. We want to make sure that those are not just out of reach, but out of their view as well. Supervision is key, of course, and we understand that eyes can't be on children at all times, but it's important that you take certain steps to prevent falls from happening. So obviously, when you're changing a child at home, for example, you want to make sure that you gather everything that you need before you go and grab your child, right? Never leave your child unattended. Falls can happen within a second. Anytime that I speak to a parent at CHLA after their child has fallen, it said, I looked away to my other kid, or I looked away to something else for just a second. It was such a short amount of time. And that's when these things tend to happen. So we always recommend, if you absolutely have to step away for whatever emergency, it's okay to place your child on the ground to prevent the fall from happening at home. And of course, if you're in public situations, you want to make sure that you use those safety straps on those changing tables always. Burn prevention, so really important. The kitchen is a very high risk area for kids because they're not only sharp objects, but things that they can cause burns. So the best thing that you can do, honestly, is either a door lock or a gate to prevent them from even entering the kitchen. But you can always use other products like the stove knob covers to make sure that those kids cannot be able to rotate anything and turn on anything. Oven locks, refrigerator locks, cabinet locks. Make sure to use those at all times to prevent entrapment, and also try to use your back burners on the stove and always rotate pan handles towards the back of the stove as well. If you have access to a water heater and you can control their temperature, especially if you live in a home, you typically can do that. You want to make sure it's set to either medium or 120 degrees to prevent burns just from opening faucets and hot water coming out. If you live in an apartment, it's a little bit harder, but they're typically set to 120, but that's information you can definitely coordinate with your manager. And then in the bathroom, we recommend for you not to leave any hot styling tools unattended, and always turn off all your candles when no one is present in a room, even if you're in a different room of the house. The last topic is drowning. Unfortunately, can only takes 2 inches of water for children to drown. And they don't, at home, they don't typically happen just if you have a pool or, you go out into an open body of water. They can happen in something small as a sink or a toilet bowl, buckets that catch, overnight rain. So you want to make sure that you use door locks to limit access to the bathroom. That's really important. Always empty your buckets at home and then, turn them upside down. Use toilet locks. Never leave your child unattended in water. And of course, when they're old enough, and we typically recommend, closer to 1 year to start taking swimming lessons, that totally can. And then to ensure your local areas with water. So what I mean by that is, if you may not have a pool at home, so you may not really talk about, safety around the pool with your child or anybody that takes care of your child at home, but maybe you go to grandma's house and grandma has a pool or has a neighbor that has a pool. So it's really important that you teach your children about safety in all areas, not just in your home. And then poison control. Remember, laundry and medicine tend to look like enticing things like beverages and candy. And, kids can easily get intoxicated. So be sure, once again, if you can't store up high and outside of their view, make sure that you use correct cabinet locks to lock it. Also, disposing of medicine is really important. Remember to remove those labels and not just toss pills into trash, because either your child will get into it or somebody else will. So dispose of it correctly. Mix your medicine with kitty litter or sawdust or coffee grounds and seal it in a bag so that nobody actually knows what's in the bag. And then always call poison control for questions. They're actually a great resource if you simply have questions about medication. If your child took the wrong dose of medication or took the wrong medication, or a person who wasn't supposed to get into medicine took it, but they're still responsive, like they're totally fine. You just want to make sure that they're going to be okay. This hotline is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But of course, if you see anything, that it's not safe, your child's not responsive, please call 911 or take them to the emergency room. And then the last thing, I just wanted to share what we do at CHLA on top of all this for our children with special healthcare needs. We have car seat resources. So if you have a child who has maybe outgrown your conventional car seat, you can bring them in and we can do an assessment with a specialized restraint. We can write a letter of medical necessity that explains your child's condition, what their needs are, and what specialized restraint might be able to sort of support all of those needs. And you can submit that letter to your insurance, regional center, or any of those for approval. And you can call us to schedule an appointment so we can make that recommendation for you. And then the last resource that we share, just in case any of those centers deny you of that purchase of that seat because they tend to be very expensive. We do have a resource with the Mariam Parma Foundation. It's a website you can go on and they can assist you with coverage or funding for therapy, prosthetics, home modifications, medical equipment that you might need, any in-home nursing for children that are injured or have any special needs. So that's the last resource that we share with our parents in case their health insurance may not be able to cover that car seat. But this is my information, so feel free to give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marjorie, for that information. It's really helpful. So next, Paolo, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about your experience in monitoring a home. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to start with talking about safety pendants and emergency buttons on panels. So for those of us that have emergency monitoring services and an alarm system set up in our home, how would it work?
Certainly. Well, thanks for having me. Marjorie, thanks for sharing that information. It's educational for me as well. So I'm a part of Rescue, and we've been in emergency dispatch for 50 years this year. And traditionally, things that we've monitored are personal emergency response systems or medical pendants, fall pendants, and we would dispatch the local ambulance or the authority having jurisdiction in that area, or if it's at a senior center or a certain community that has a different first responder, we would go ahead and dispatch authorities to that. But basically, you would have a base station that would communicate a wireless protocol to sensors, and one of the sensors could be a medical pendant that goes around your neck or something that goes on your wrist. And it wirelessly communicates not through Wi-Fi, but through another proprietary radio frequency. Usually has a pretty long range within a home and dwelling or an apartment. but typically only works at that home or dwelling and apartment unless you enable a GPS service. But you would hit the button, and then as soon as you hit that button, it has a protocol typically to summon the ambulance or EMT services to your location.
Okay, that's really helpful to know. So with regards, let me switch views here. So, one of the things we're concerned about is being able to monitor someone. So if there's a problem at home, one of the technologies I've looked at before is using cameras in the home. So can you tell me how a Wi-Fi camera or some type of a camera in the home can help you keep an eye on somebody that you're caring for?
Sure. So for somebody that's living with an at-risk condition, or somebody maybe that is a senior, or autism, or any other type of condition, or somebody that you need to monitor, I would say with a security camera, the most important thing is two-way audio. So all security cameras are going to give you a visual, but two-way audio, I think, helps add some context to the story. So if you can listen to see what's going on, making sure that your elderly parent is getting to their medicine cabinet, or cooking themselves meals, or eating and going to the fridge, and then or monitoring windows, not necessarily for a burglary or an intrusion, but to use it as what we call a 24-hour zone, so that way you can monitor when that opening is closed and open. You can enable chime features on there, and then you can also layer sensors with cameras, so you can get a little bit better picture as to what's going on within the home. It's actually great technology. I love all the practical examples, even the ones that Marjorie gave, but using technology and data to also help with decision making and for safety is also a good option too.
Oh, excellent. Great advice. So I know your company has this emergency call app that I've learned about recently. Can you explain how how your company's apps and other types of apps actually work, how they help?
Sure. So Rescue started with a cry for help. My dad actually called 911 in 2016, and it took 45 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. And we left that experience being in private dispatch for about 45 years or 44 years up until that point. We said that's just not acceptable. Our subscribers and people in our community just get fast response. The reality is there's over 250 million 911 calls a year, and it's burdening the system. And then even your stats, Mark, that you reviewed, seniors over the age of 65, the #1 reason for death is a fall. And in the last 10 years, that number, or that figure, has increased by 58%. So it's a significant pandemic, if you will, as senior falls. And same with children. There was the 3 million number that you shared, but there's over 2.2 million kids that are in the ER with related injuries, and over half of those are under 4 years old. So what we're aiming to do at Rescue is get people immediate help, no questions asked, no talking required. It's 2 taps on your smartphone and help is on the way. You preload all your information, your location, your medical conditions, your gate code, your security code, anything that would help the dispatch process. And then as soon as you dispatch, not only do the first responders are aware of what's happening, but your friends and family get instantly notified. So your caregiving community just within your own family, everyone's made aware within seconds. You don't have to place a 911 call with somebody, then send a separate text message and a separate call with somebody else. It's all kind of done seamlessly within seconds, because just a few minutes without oxygen, you start having neural damage, and 5 minutes without oxygen, you're talking fatality. So moments and seconds matter in an emergency.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Fantastic new service. And my final question for you is about door and window sensors. I've installed them for myself. I'm a do-it-yourself guy, and I'm unsure sometimes how many doors I need to cover, how many windows I should cover, or should I put them on other things like cabinets and refrigerators? So what advice would you have on door and window sensors?
The simple things is any heavier secure area, alcohol cabinets, liquor cabinets, medicine cabinets, cabinets with anything that might be restricted, such as firearms, potentially, or shiny things. I love what Marjorie said, is younger individuals tend to look at poisons and liquids and chemicals as candy, and they're advertised in that way with all the colors and different configurations. So anything that needs to be restricted, I think, should be monitored. And I come from two types of monitoring of sensors in door and windows, for intrusion and burglary purposes, and then also for 24-hour safety purposes. So just make sure you invest in platforms. And like you said, there's DIY platforms where you don't necessarily need a professional company to come out there and for you. You can certainly do it yourself. Just make sure they give you options where they notify you on your phone and notify a network, and then they can be programmed to be what we call a 24-hour zone or a safety zone versus an actual intrusion zone that would require an arming or disarming type sequence. So it's good to know the differences between them both, but I highly recommend them.
Oh, fantastic, Paolo. Thank you for that great advice. And Jeannie, thank you again for joining us. And I have, please unmute yourself, and I have some questions for you. And so we really want to ask you some stuff about wandering. And so when a loved one has a tendency to wander, what are the things we need to think about doing to plan to try to prevent a bad thing from happening, an injury or a loss from happening?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And I loved hearing what you both had to say about everything, as we all are working to just make our family members safer and happier. But I can say when it comes to elopement and wandering, it usually just starts with the diagnosis. You either get a diagnosis of something like autism, or you get a diagnosis of something like Alzheimer's dementia. And there's this anxiety that just blankets you as a caregiver, whether or not you're a child or an adult. So you're going to be looking at all the typical things, door alarms. You know, you can go to your local hardware store and find those little $5 things you put on your door that make big noises. Anything just to make sure that they're not going to elope and wander and do those things. I mean, I have 2 children with autism, so I can tell you our house is very well equipped with all of those things. But then there's also the other things that you have to worry about, just in terms of proactive monitoring, not necessarily in your home, because you cannot put door alarms wherever you go. So you have to have those proactive alerts that are going to help you. God forbid there is some sort of an elopement or wandering.
Okay. Well, can you talk a little bit about AngelSense and the way that AngelSense as a GPS tracker works?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the thing about AngelSense is I started using it for my kids because they were autistic and elopers. And now, as I work for the company, I see that it's not just a tool for elopement and wandering, but for independence, employment, Alzheimer's, dementia, like every stage of your life when you have a special need. So the way that AngelSense works is you have these things that you have to have in your home, the alarms and whatnot, but then you have the proactive alerts that this device will send to your cell phone if they were to leave their school, leave their place of employment, leave an adult who leaves their home or something like that. And you're proactively alerted that they have left, and you can use all of the things that AngelSense has, like the two-way speakerphone that is automatic, and the show my location, where you can see exactly where you are as opposed to where that person is, or share the location with another person who might be close to them, or law enforcement, to just basically prevent what we consider an elopement to a moment where they have left a situation and you are proactively able to stop them from it becoming a search and rescue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what do you do in the case of like an adult or even a child that you can't necessarily give them a GPS tracker, or they're not willing to carry it?
Yeah, no, and that's basically why AngelSense started, which is so interesting. So, you know, like when my son eloped, I started researching all of this online. What can I get for him? And he, at the time, was 3, so sensory conscious. You couldn't put a watch on him. He would toss it off. He wouldn't want to wear it. So the way AngelSense was designed was it has all these different accessories that you can use, or you cannot remove it. I'm just going to quickly show you. They have these little fasteners and keys that you can put onto the device in a sleeve, stick it on the person in a pants pocket, on a jacket, whatever you might need, and other accessories like a belt and whatnot. So the person who's wearing it cannot remove it, because it was designed for those that were sensory, what's the word? Sensory sensitive. So it can't be removed by the person wearing it.
Okay, very good. That's really good information. So we don't have any questions right now from the audience. So I'm gonna ask you guys a couple additional questions just to walk around a little bit. Starting with Marjorie, can you give, one of the things we talked about before the call was getting to know the neighborhood, and also so when a child has a risk of being out and about in an environment that you're not used to, like it could be a hotel, it could be somebody else's home, could be an airport. What are the things that we need to consider when we're out in somebody else's home or a different environment in terms of injuries to children?
I love that question, Mark. One of the major things that we talk to parents about is the one thing that you know that other people won't know about safety is medicine and ingestion. That's the biggest thing, because you might be able to take your child somewhere else, and people around you may be able to see, oh, that's something they could slip on, or that's something that they can get hurt. It's a sharp object. There's water in this location. So those are typical things that most people that are around your child can definitely assist with. But medicine is really important, because if your child's on medication, with most children with special healthcare needs are, it's important that you do take that information wherever you go. And even if you are still the person that's taking care of your child in a different location, we tell parents to take a handout with you, take a medicine schedule with you, teach that to other parents or your typical caregivers for your child. So let's say you take turns taking care of your child with grandparents or with a sister, aunt, uncle. It's important that they know schedule. Did you already take this today? Did you fill this out? What medication cannot be crossed with other medication? What do I do if they have some sort of reaction? Maybe it's the first time that they're taking it. Emergency phone numbers are also really important to have across your house, and then also to share that with other people. And also, I think drowning is a big thing too, because if you've never been to a home, you have no idea, that this person has maybe buckets of water that are catching rain from the night before, or there's a leak somewhere, or they have access to the bathroom. Every house is set up differently. And of course, as a parent with a child who has special needs, you definitely are super prepared around your home. But it's important that you take your child's safety into consideration, and maybe talk to the people that you're going to visit about the safety and any concerns that you might have. It's important to have that talk before you get there.
Thank you, Marjorie. Jeannie, I have another question for you. With regards to a wandering adult or child, what type of information would you suggest that you provide on that person's body, on their clothing, or on them somehow, so that an individual that finds them knows who to contact? So if it's a child, should they have some type of label on them?
Absolutely. I mean, identification cards of some kind are definitely so important. If you have a person with a special need or that has Alzheimer's, dementia, having something on their person that just says this person may not be verbal, this person may not respond to you in a positive way when you want to speak to them, is so important. Even down to at AngelSense, and I know a lot of other places have this too, things that they can put right on a wow, I'm losing my train of thought. A seat belt that just says, God forbid there was an accident, this person may not be verbal, may not respond to you. This is X, Y, and Z. And it's all there for them. It's so important because when you have a person, especially not even just children with autism, people with dementia, Alzheimer's, they're going to be so confused if they're in a situation where they don't know where to turn and people are coming up to them, asking them questions. You want to have something on them, like just a quick ID card that just says, this is the contact information, this is the person to reach in that certain situation if something was to occur. And I can't say that enough. I have an 87-year-old mother who we're definitely thinking about these things for as well. You just want to make sure they have something identifying on them that they might not be able to respond to you in a situation if it's a crisis.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jeannie. And Paolo, I don't have a question for you because you obviously you're very thorough in your description of your program and what you're expert on. But do you have?
I have a question for Jeannie and Mark. So would you say, and I agree with that thought, would you say that a medical ID or a medical bracelet, does that also serve as a purpose to help announce potentially what somebody might be? Is that a good label, or is that not effective enough? I'm just curious, more from my perspective.
Yeah. So if the person has a medical need, the medical bracelet, there are different kinds of medical bracelets, but that's the first thing an EMS person looks for. If the person's unconscious, they look at the wrist right away and say, okay, is this, because they normally you ask a person if they're injured about some questions about their health history. If the individual is unable to respond, that tag is very important. So that absolutely a medical alert bracelet of some sort is one way to do it. And Jeannie, are you familiar with the iPhone or the different apps, the different technologies on the cell phones?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, iPhones are just limitless with what they can do in terms of just helping people out. When you think of something like Find My iPhone, though, and things like that, the only thing that bothers me about them is that they're very retroactive. If you want to find somebody, you have to open that app to find their location. And it's not just AngelSense. There's a lot of other trackers out there where they're constantly monitoring, so you don't have to activate an app. You can just go to the app and it shows you where they've been and what they've been doing. Even Life 360, other things like that. You know, it really depends on the person, their level of need. Life 360 is really more geared towards typical individuals. Or something like AngelSense, when you have these nonverbal children with autism or adults with onset dementia, you can track them prior to an incident happening.
Yeah, I would say that if they're for individuals carrying an iPhone or something like an iPhone, there's a section of the iPhone for emergencies that most EMS staff now know about, where you can list out allergies, potentially medications, and most importantly, emergency contact information. And I know your app, Paolo, also provides that contact information to EMS. But if it's not an EMS person, a general lay person that finds a child or adult, the medical alert bracelets with some contact information are really helpful.
That's good.
Yeah.
One thing I really like is that we all have different backgrounds, but one common thing besides safety is preparedness, and that helps save lives. So I appreciate everyone's inputs. For me, helps me get better as a safety person.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for joining me today. This is a great discussion. It's going to be recorded for those listening. You're going to find it on YouTube. Any resources that we discussed during this event are going to be posted along with any videos. So you'll find a list of websites and to get other information about products and services and concepts that we discussed. Please join us next week on March 2nd. We're going to have a special episode specifically on autism service dogs. So if you have children or even adults with autism and have an interest in getting a service dog for them, stay tuned. It's going to be a cute and wonderful presentation on autism service dogs. Everyone have a good evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.